What's up, people? Welcome back. Alright, this is going to be just a quick update sequel to why Windows users can't switch to Linux. Now, when I posted this video some time ago, I didn't mean to say 100% all Windows users can't switch to Linux. I have, well, at least in a dual boot environment alongside Windows 7, and I have multiple versions of Linux alongside Windows 7. Before I give you my top reasons why some Windows users don't switch to Linux, quick shout out to Bob Lake. Thank you for some of your observations. Thank you for your civil and friendly answer comment to this. Obviously, a topic like this with over 100,000 views, I'm going to get all kinds of comments, both positive and negative. That's to be expected. Those of you who replied in a friendly, civil manner, even if you disagreed, thank you, and that's cool with me. Alright, getting back to this. Some top reasons why Windows users don't switch to Linux. And maybe they did switch, but had to go back to Windows because of some reasons. Now, this is by no means a complete list of reasons, but let me give you my top three just to make this short. Number three reason that why a Windows user can't switch or doesn't switch to Linux is too much choice. One of my favorite websites is distrowatch.com. Great place to get started if you are new to learn about Linux and different distributions. But the problem is, if you are completely new, meaning a newbie or a dummy, and I say that in a manner with utmost respect, if you are completely new to this, which one do you choose? If you go to the right, there is a list here of 100 different choices of Linux distributions. Not to mention the variations, the betas, the forks. I've sometimes joked with so many choices, sometimes things get all forked up, if you know what I mean. Now, it might be safe to say, well, if you're a newbie, go with the top 10. Well, let's take a look at the top 10. I would say Mint is probably a good choice. Debian, not sure. Ubuntu, sure. Mageia, maybe. Fedora, probably not. Manjaro, if you read the documentation, sure. Arch Linux, same thing. You have to read the documentation, especially with Arch. So my number three reason why a Windows user doesn't switch to Linux or may have switched back to Windows is too much choice. I agree that choice is a good thing, but too much of anything, even choice, is not necessarily the best thing. Excuse me. Not necessarily the best thing, at least when it comes to a Windows newbie. My second reason, top reason why a Windows user doesn't switch to Linux is unfriendly forums, uncivilized comments. You guys can figure that out. I've gotten multiple personal messages in the past asking Toss, why are Linux forums so unfriendly? Well, they're not all unfriendly. Not all people are mean. Most people are actually very nice and will take the time to help you, such as myself or some of my podcast partners on this channel. But it only takes one bad experience for a Windows user seeking to get help just to say, you know what, Linux isn't worth it. It sucks, without even trying it. That is, to be sure, an unfair statement. But as I say, you will never get a second chance to make a good first impression. So if a Windows newbie asks you a question, no matter how stupid it may seem to you who knows a lot about Linux, please be patient. Take the time to answer it. It doesn't have to be a long answer. And even if you don't want to take the time to fully answer the question, at least point them in the right direction. If I was a newbie, a Linux newbie, I would appreciate that. Just my 2 cents worth about that. The number one reason why a Windows user doesn't switch to Linux, something doesn't work. For example, let's say they switch to Ubuntu and, well, you know what? I can't get my printer to work. My system crashed after doing updates. Maybe something wrong with video drivers. I can't sync my smartphone properly. My computer went out of hibernation. Now it freezes. You know, with Linux, not with all of Linux, with LTS releases, you tend to have less problems. But generally speaking, for whatever reason, and maybe it's user error, maybe they didn't fully read the documentation, that's a fair statement, but for myself, something that works in Windows just doesn't quite work in Linux. I installed Linux on one of my friend's computers. Now he's having trouble with hooking up a printer, playing YouTube videos. I understand that. Been there, done that. Now, it's not that it's that difficult to find an answer, but you do need to have the time to take the time to find an answer. And in some ways, you are solving a puzzle. Now, some things just are not going to work that well in Linux all the time. Multimedia such as screencasting software, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Most Linux converts coming from Windows probably don't need a screen recorder, but they want their printer to work, hook up their smartphone, they don't want issues with video drivers and stuff like that. Anyway, that is my top reason why some Windows users don't switch to Linux, or maybe have switched but had to go back, because even with all the issues with Windows, such as malware, updates, and having to reboot the system multiple times, which can be annoying, at least as long as the Windows computer is malware free, software, printers tend to work a little bit better in Windows than they do in Linux distributions. Now, I thought long and hard about this. Is there a solution to this? Well, the only solution I see as a Windows user, maybe you guys can correct this, is to get a computer with pre-installed Linux. If you have a pre-installed Linux computer, or pre-installed Windows computer or Mac, and something does not work out of the box, you have a problem with that computer. You should take it back and get it exchanged. With pre-installed software, I don't think you're going to have an issue with compatibility issues between the software and the hardware. So if you still wanted to try Linux, because well, my number one reason why I do Linux is because I don't have to worry about malware, generally speaking. So my number one reason for Linux is security. With Windows, you need antivirus, spyware shields, you need to maintain that, defragmentation. It needs multiple tune-ups multiple times throughout the course of the year or years in using your Windows system. You don't have that maintenance annoyance with Linux. So the only solution I see this where something doesn't work out of the box is to buy a Linux computer out of the box with Linux pre-installed. Because if there's something wrong out of the box, then you should probably just take that computer back, because it needs to work out of the box to avoid compatibility issues between the hardware and the software. So that is my solution as to why Windows users don't, or have tried switching to Linux but didn't feel like solving puzzles. I'll post links below in the show notes. You can check the TotalOS Today shop. I've posted some recommendations to try Linux-based pre-installed Linux computers, and they're not all that difficult to learn. If you buy something like this and need help, search my channel for Ubuntu. Once you get used to Ubuntu, and then not having to worry about viruses, you may not ever go back to Windows. I'm just speculating. Anyway, those are my top 3 reasons why some Windows users don't switch to Linux. Thank you so much for all of your comments. Well, for most of your comments who were civil enough, friendly enough to post both positive and negative comments. As always, I will catch all of you sometime in the future.